let's start with Hair Barb, who says, what will be a tougher road game, Oklahoma or Nebraska?
It's a great question,
I know.
right? I think Nebraska is going to be better, and that is one of the tougher venues in terms of fan support that I have seen in the Big Ten, witnessed personally. Clay, you were there that
Hmm.
at that night game. That was you were on the were you on the field that at that point or
No,
in the
box,
stands?
press
Okay,
box.
okay, yeah, but
But
you could even
I
then you
mean,
couldn't hear yourself think. It was unbelievable. So
it was,
um,
yeah, it gives me chills thinking about it. That was one of the coolest environments I've ever
it
seen back
was.
in 2021. Yeah.
Yeah, and Michigan players are dancing to the music at the end of the third quarter, and that was just fantastic. I'm going to say it's a push. I think Oklahoma's going to be a tough crowd. That's going to be a tough ticket, just because it's the first time that Michigan's ever gone there. So I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'm going to say that's a push. I'll be happy, kind of, if I wouldn't say I'll be happy if they get a split, but it won't surprise me. And if you're going to tell me which one would I want to win more, obviously it's the conference game.
100%. I'll say, yeah, it's tough, and I haven't dug into their rosters.
Right.
But I think that Oklahoma being earlier in the year maybe is slightly tougher for me just because you don't
Mhm.
know what the quarterback situation is going to be, breaking in a new O line, that sort of thing. It's the reason why I said Texas last year over Oregon when everyone asked the same question is just where it is in the schedule.
Yep.
Is going to be tough. And you add in the element that maybe you don't have your full staff, coaching staff for that game. Depending on what happens with the NCAA, it just
Yeah.
is what it is.
I don't see that happening. I think it's
Either
going to
do
keep it
I,
like
but
that. Yep.
if I have to
Yeah.
shade it one side or the other
Yep.
percentages, I'll
Okay.
say Oklahoma's tougher.
Fair.
Go Blue 101 says, think we will get a punter in the portal.
I do still think they're looking for a punter in the portal. Now, Beckham Sunderland is a kid who can kick, and he can punt too, according to Brandon Cornblue of Cornblue Kicking, former Michigan kicker, and he is on scholarship, I've been told. So I think that he's going to have an opportunity. Hudson Hollenbeck, everybody's like, well, you saw his average. I saw a couple really good kicks, and then I saw some really bad kicks, right? And you have to have that consistency. So I know that they want one. I know that they're going to still continue to look for one. The question is, will they be able to find one? Because everybody's looking, right? That's they're going to the portal, and there aren't going to be that many, according to Cornblue. So I do think that that is something that they'll continue to look for.
Yeah, I'll say they get one. It feels like that, but who knows if they'll be better. It's kind of surprising they're in this spot, I guess, because
Yeah.
Doman. I think you banked on 5 years, but you can't really bank on anything anymore.
Well,
You
especially when he's not. I mean, he should have been a lot better than he is. And I
hmm
don't know if he wasn't spending as much time on his craft, but now he's down in Florida. There were some things behind the scenes there and he's a great kid. Don't get me wrong, but to me, he needed to be better, and that should have been a no-brainer. But it's just what happens. So back to the portal you go.
And think of the specialists Michigan has picked up in the spring over the last couple of years. James Turner,
Hmm.
Dominic Zavada, even Hudson Hollenbeck was a spring find. You needed him in
Yeah,
the Alabama game, even though he was spotty and his hang time was really low compared to the other guys.
right.
Got some nice bounces, and then one was a touchback or whatever it was, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
But you're picking up guys in the spring. You got no one knew Zavada was going to be that good. He did have great
Oh,
numbers at Arkansas State, but
oh my God.
to become he's at the top of, like, if you look at the record book, he's at the top of like every stat. He missed one kick.
Yeah, and a lot of them were 50 yarders. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And I asked Cornblue, I said, this is better than the Moody seasons, right? And Cornblue loves Moody, Jake Moody, and he said, well, yeah, kind of. He didn't have as many kicks, but the ones that he made and how critical they were. Think about this, right? If he misses his 54-yarder, you got an overtime game, and if Fielding makes his 26-yarder, then they lose. So that was the difference in that game, and some of the kicks were just ridiculous. This guy, and the fact that he's coming back for another year is just fantastic. So this year, I hear though he's going to be the I in OHIO instead of the instead of the O or whatever he was this year when they mocked them on the field after that win
Yep.
coming up November 29th.
And he tweeted the photo yesterday after Michigan basketball beat Ohio State.
He did.
I thought that was good. He's becoming like, I mean, he's kind of like a not even a folk legend, or a folk hero, just a hero and a
Yeah.
legend in and of himself. And he just everything he does seems like the Michigan fan base eats it up. Um,
They
a
just
Wolverine.
what a troll job though. OHIO from your specialist down there.
They played a big game.
Everybody's being maced, and the big guys are fighting, and you're in the background making the OHIO. That's just epic. That's just
It it was.
yep.
It was. And by the way, Tommy Dolman flipped the field a couple times, so
He did. That was huge. One of them
that was
should not
big.
have been. One of them was a misplay. It was a short line drive or a line drive, and but you know what? You need everything that you can get, and those two plays, that and the kickoff. I think it was Travion Henderson, right? They started the second half at the 6 yard line,
Yes.
and they drive, but they don't get down where they need to be because they started that drive at the 6 yard line. Those are the plays, and when you talk about flipping fields and field position, those were two huge plays in that game that get overlooked.
Ohio State does what they do in the college football playoff, and all I kept seeing is like, how did Michigan beat this team? It's like I have like 15 reasons. Like they had a lot of things
Yeah,
that went right, but also at the top of that list is just Mason Graham. You can just say that, and that's
yeah, they got
essentially
bullied.
says
They
it
got
all.
bullied by a team that was better in the trenches, especially defensively. So,
Right.
you know what? But congratulations on your cute little championship there.
A Wolverine 2 says, what is your over under for 5 stars in the 2026 class if the number is set at 3.5? I'll go under.
Yeah, me too. Still tough to get 5 stars, and frankly, I don't care because look at all these guys that Mason Graham was a 3 star. Mikey Sainristil was a 3 star. You know, it really depends on identification. Yeah, and I get that you need some 5 stars, right? But and Jim Harbaugh was elite at identifying some of these guys. There's no question about it. But later on, his coaches really did a nice job there too. I'm hoping and expecting that Michigan coaches are just as good at identifying talent. And we've seen the class that they had that was, I think, ranked like 17th or something like that. And the number of guys that in that class that actually turned out to be and play like 5 stars was like watching a John Beeline team, right? With Trey Burke was a 3 star,
Sure.
Tim Hardaway was a 3 star, and at the end of the day, they were all 5 star talents. So there are some guys that qualify in this coming class as well. I have never paid less attention to recruiting in terms of stars than I have in the last 4 or 5 years. Just knowing and seeing, yeah, there are some guys that can't miss, but it's fantastic what Michigan has become development U, frankly, and hopefully that continues under Sherrone Moore.
hmm I think it's tough to get to even 3
Yeah,
in a class, and not that you need it, right? You just
no,
laid it out. You don't need that. They've gotten 2. I was just looking at this. They've gotten 2 this past year with Andrew Babalola, Bryce Underwood. 2019 you had 2. 2017 you had 2. The Chad Henne year, I believe, with Tim Jameson, if On3's database is correct, they had 2. But that was it's hard to get 3. I
yep.
mean, it's not impossible, but we
hmm
shall see. Jim Rome Stinks says, great username, great poster over at thewolverine.com. He says, what is the most easily recognizable change we're going to see early in the Chip Lindsey era? Of course, Chip Lindsey, Michigan's new offensive coordinator. He says, please let it be a screen pass.
RPOs. I think he'll be heavy RPOs. I think there will be some screen passes too, obviously. Um, and again, you still need execution, right? Kirk Campbell gets ripped on here. There were some plays that should have worked, a lot of things that he did and scripts that should have worked that didn't because the offensive line was just that bad, and the quarterback play as well, obviously, and the receivers. But yeah, other than that, it was fantastic, right? You had the tight end, you had the running back, and then
You did. Yeah.
right, and then
And a
after
kicker.
that, and a kicker. Yeah. So, but you're going to see more RPOs. You're going to see, you're still going to see a heavy run offense, though. Sherrone Moore is going to insist upon it. And that means that offensive line has to get better. Everything starts with that offensive line better. And I'll tell you this, the offensive isn't going to be better if that offensive line isn't better. It'll be a little bit better, but it's not going to be a ton better unless those guys step up.
I agree. I think we were asked this a couple weeks ago. I said more passing.
hmm
I just think that's when you look at he's still balanced and he's still had 1,000-yard running backs, things like that, but he's developed quarterbacks well. They've thrown more than Michigan has. Of course, you do what your personnel dictates, and you do what the identity of your program is as well. And Sherrone Moore, like you said, they're still going to run the football, but I'm really interested to see it too. Right? I can't really fully answer it, but I feel like Sherrone Moore he's gonna like Chip Lindsey's gonna run his offense.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be collaborative with Sherrone Moore, who's a great offensive mind himself, but it's going to be different, I think,
hmm
and it'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
But the good thing is 44 will still be out there. Max
Yeah.
B. So we'll
Yeah, go
see.
like you said, a little bit of crazy, looking for somebody to hit. I still go back to that play in the Ohio State game when Alex Orji runs for 30 something yards or whatever it was,
Yep,
because the safety was so pissed off at Max Bredesen for bullying him 2 plays before that he forgot what he was doing, and instead of securing the edge, he goes to hit Max Bredesen, and Alex Orji runs right by him. That's the kind of impact that a guy like that can have on a football team. And of course, he was the lead blocker on the touchdown in that game as well. So
the
great to
one
have Max.
touchdown.
The one touchdown that was enough to win that football game, and it's great to have
And yeah, well,
Max
and
Bredesen
he
back.
was on top of Jack Sawyer, whose helmet came off, and
Yeah,
there was a runoff on the clock.
the memes on that one have been fantastic,
Yeah, they have been.
and that's where we'll end that discussion.
That's right. It does not have. That's why he always wears shorts. Doesn't have gold pants. Let's take a few basketball questions here. Grape Ape says, "What do you think of the rotations with Roddy coming off the bench? Is the bench ostensibly just Will and Roddy? Does Sam Walters play meaningful minutes between now and the NCAA tournament? He could be an X
Hmm.
factor in the tournament. It'll be interesting to see where he kind of fits in when he's back. Back soreness. His grandfather passed away as well.
Hmm.
So prayers to the Walters
Yeah.
family. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because looking at the numbers earlier today, the bench has played less minutes.
Hmm.
And it could be because Walter's out, but
Yep.
he doesn't play that many minutes. They've played less minutes the last 3 games since Roddy started to come off the bench because he's kind of playing his normal amount,
Yeah.
and then Ruben's playing more.
Yep.
Um, so it's basically is kind of 7 guys plus the LJ Case and Justin Pippen minutes. I think you'll tighten it down a little bit because TV timeouts are shorter and the games are more important. But I'm interested to see how that plays out too.
Yeah, and it was interesting your question today. You beat me to that one about Fat Brooks because somebody
Mm,
asked it on the message board as
yep.
well. What's his role? And he said there are going to be times that we need him for 2, 3 possessions,
Mm-hmm.
maybe at the end of a half, maybe before one of the TV timeouts. And I was thinking Friday night would be a perfect spot for that, right? You've got those guys have that edge, the Michigan guys in this game, where they are going all out, right? And I could see
Mm-hmm.
Fat getting in there maybe for a couple defensive possessions or something like that, and making a difference. So, not making a difference, but making an impact. So we'll see. I do think that the bench still has more to offer. Gale there certainly helps. I think this is a better team right now with Reuben Jones in the starting lineup, and I think we've seen that. I do think Sam Walters there is a role for him as a shooter. He's got to make the shots when they're there because that's why he's in the game, right? But the good news is he did some other things as well, defensively and rebounding when he wasn't making a couple shots. Was it 2, 3 games ago? I forget, but where he impacted the game and Dusty May gave him credit for that. So he will have an impact down the stretch. I don't think there's any question.
I agree. And I mean, great point on Fat Brooks. Like the way Dusty went to Roddy Gale in Columbus down the
Hmm.
stretch for a couple plays didn't feel like an accident.
No, it did
Um,
not.
and he delivered right with
Yep.
2 huge buckets that we talked about at the top of the show. In-state kid. There's it's just something different about kids from Grand Rapids Catholic Central as well.
I
And
think you're a little biased, but that's okay. Says the Catholic Central graduate here. Yeah.
exactly, but in-state game against Michigan State, I could see that. And there
Yep.
actually been a couple times the last 6, 7, 8 games since we've seen Fat Brooks, whatever it's been, that I've thought that at the end of a half or something like
Yep.
that, especially Donaldson's in foul trouble.
Yep.
Like I would maybe stick him in there at the end of a
Yeah,
half.
and LJ Kaysen, again, the LJ Kaysen experience, 5 points and then
I
a
love
couple
it.
blow-bys, and uh, he's got a bright future, man. But boy, I do. There's no fear anyway, right? And that's the thing. In a game like even like Friday night, he wasn't hesitant to pull a couple of those shots, made a big one, and they needed both of them. Let's be honest, to win that basketball game. So
Hmm.
maybe his net positive was a 1, but hey, 1 is better than 0 or negative.
For sure. Grape Ape with another one. We'll just do this one real quick. Is Wisconsin the best team in the Big Ten? We beat them after unveiling our 4-5 pick and roll. It's been scouted hard since that game. How do you think Michigan matches up with Wisconsin if we see them in Indy? It's always interesting to see a
Hmm.
second matchup between two
Hmm.
teams. Here's the thing that people are like, oh, if Michigan and Wisconsin played now, it's like when Michigan played Wisconsin, they were, I think, number 13 or 11 in the country, whatever it
Yeah,
was. Wisconsin was 8-0.
yeah.
They had dropped 101 points on Arizona, all this stuff. So it's not like they were nothing
No.
earlier in the year. They went on a 3-game losing streak that included that Michigan loss, and then they've been really good ever since. They've been really good all season. Michigan got them at a point where they were playing well, but Michigan just kind of locked down everybody not named John Tonji and John Blackwell,
Yep.
which is kind of what you need to do, and had the more physical, skilled big men, which I
Yep.
think is still going to be the case if they match up again.
You are what your record says you are. Wisconsin is not the best, Big Ten's best at this point. Will they be in 3 weeks? Maybe they'll be there at the top or tied for the top. But as of right now, Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten, and there are 3 weeks for somebody to knock them off that perch. Certainly could happen. Some great games. I can't wait till tomorrow night's Purdue game. I was going to go see Rich Marion's Dexter Ann Arbor Pioneer team at Dexter tomorrow night, and then I remembered Michigan State Purdue's on tomorrow night. Man, it'd be tough to pull that away from that one, but um, so many meaningful games yet to be played in the Big Ten tournament. And Clay and I were talking about this today. Would it suck to lose on that Friday of the Big Ten tournament with a double bye? Yes, but if it means you got the number one seed and you're the Big Ten champion, then whatever.
For sure.
Yep.
And yeah, especially if you win the Big Ten regular season, even in 2013, when we had I had Spike Albrecht on a podcast 2 years ago and asked him about the Big Ten tournament, and he said we didn't care about that game at all when they lost to Wisconsin in that second round. They just wanted to get out of Big Ten play, breath of fresh air in the NCAA tournament, and they go all the way to the finals. So, but you're right. I mean, selfishly being there, it's like you want them to play as long as possible because it's way more fun that way. Yep. But yeah, I had Wisconsin second today in our Big Ten power rankings behind Michigan.
I think that's where they are. Yeah. I think, yep. But I will say Purdue, I think Purdue beats Michigan State tomorrow, and they're still going to be a factor here.
In figuring out who the best teams are and what the pecking order is hard to do given week to week. It's all these different schedules. And I will say Wisconsin has a very easy schedule, relatively speaking, the rest of the way. They still have tough games, Illinois, Michigan State, but they have Washington, Minnesota, and Penn State left.
Minnesota, though. At Minnesota can be tricky.
Sure.
So we'll see.
But it's all relative because
it is all relative.
If you're Michigan, you got to go to Michigan State. I mean, so does Wisconsin, but Michigan also has Nebraska left. They got really tough home games left. So it's tough to say. And really you play only 3 teams twice, and you see everyone else.
Fun to care again. Last year at this time, I was like Clay. I think was like the only media member up there on press row at the end of February.
Right. Yeah. It has to be covered.
Yeah, somebody had to do it. You drew the short straw, and you never complained. In fact, you acted like it was the best night of your life when you were there.
It was all choice.
Exactly.
And look, this is an elite program nationally. It had to be covered. Someone had to cover it. Yep. And now here they are. So let's see. Let's go to Sasquatch 616. Early this season, general consensus was the Big Ten wasn't very deep or very good. Do you think all these close victories for Michigan is more indicative of Michigan not being quite good enough to make a deep run in the tournament this year, or more indicative that the Big Ten is actually better than people thought? Everything's so case by case, although it is crazy their last 7 wins have been by 4 points or fewer. But I'll say
again, which is the Big Ten's
pretty good. And
I agree.
Yeah. And it's tough to win, like when you go on the road. And again, it's some of those shots at the end make it look closer. But yeah, I think every game was kind of its own animal in a way. And they threw away some possessions earlier in some of these games and blew some leads. So it just kind of everything was a little, each one was a little different.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think I look at Purdue. I think that's a really good basketball team. So fundamentally sound. I love Matt Painter. I really do. I love watching his teams play. And they haven't had a ton of tournament success under him, but they made a deep run. So, and I think Wisconsin is going to be tougher for teams. We'll see what Michigan State does if they shoot the ball well. But there are teams in the Big Ten I think that can make some noise, and I think Michigan is a matchup problem for a lot of programs outside the Big Ten. Let's put it that way. So, we talk about, hey, Michigan, well, if they had to play so-and-so again, if they had to play Wake Forest again, if they had to play Oklahoma again, I'd really like Michigan in those games.
Yeah. Oklahoma and Arkansas turned out to not be that good. And Wake Forest is just kind of one of these
Right.
middling ACC teams
Yep.
in a weak ACC.
Yep.
So yeah, it all kind of evens out a little bit,
Hmm.
and they got those. You'd much rather lose those ones than the ones you've won close lately.
That's right.
Let's see. Jim Rome stinks again. Is this team going to make a deep, or if this team's going to make a deep run, an unsung hero is going to have a big game, get them over the hump in a game or two? Which player is going to have that performance?
Unsung hero. That's a
Mm-hmm.
tough one, right? I thought Roddy Gale against Purdue, for example, was an example. He's kind of unsung now, right? So, um, but you know, that's a hard one because again, it's about matchups and things like that. Could it be a Sam Walters hitting three threes in a game or something like that? As John
Right.
Beeline used to call them, the outliers, right? And Tom Izzo always bitches about the outliers when they beat his team at Michigan. Whether you were talking about Colton Christian one year made a shot, oh God, how did he make a shot? Well, he's still a D1 player, Tom, and one year, who was it that made three threes in a game against him? He said, well,
Xavier Simpson was one of those.
right. And he's like, we let him have those shots because he can't shoot. And gosh, he made them when they were wide open. That shouldn't happen against my team ever. So,
Right.
but
Or it's like, yeah. I mean, you
yeah,
go through it. Michigan just went. Devin Royal hit 3 threes the other day against Michigan. He
yeah,
hit 10 all year before that. It happens, right?
right.
You
It
leave a guy open for
happens.
a reason. You play the percentages.
Right, exactly. And sometimes you get burned, right? Just like in FanDuel when you think you got it won, and then a guy hits a 65-footer at the buzzer. So,
Exactly.
yeah, which is why Clay had to sell some of his art. That's why the right side of his wall is bare there. He had to sell his $2,000 painting, I think it was, right,
That's right.
to pay his debts. So just don't gamble, kids. That's the
It's all
message
worth it.
here. That's the message here.
It's all worth it as
Yeah,
long as you got a little skin in the game.
there you go.
Um, all right, last one from EJ Holland, our coworker, covers Michigan recruiting. Go check him out. Says who wins in this 2v2 tournament? John Borton and Chris Webber. And by the way, I asked for clarification. These are the Michigan players, their form when they were at Michigan. So John Borton
Okay.
and Chris Webber, Chris Ballas and Jalen Rose. Those two, that's a match made in heaven right there.
Mhm.
Clay and Jawan Howard. That's also a match made in heaven. And Anthony Broom and Trey Burke. I mean, I think you
Nobody's
probably take your team. I'll probably take my I'll take my
nobody's stopping Chris Webber in a 2-on-2 environment. Let's be honest, he's going to dominate. So John Borton can sit there and just throw the ball high to him and get out of the way.
Can he get that
And
pass off though?
that's a great question. Not if I'm guarding him. So I'm
No,
going with
I'll be
I'm going with yeah. So yeah, you got what are you 6'1", 6'2"?
yeah, right around there.
Yeah.
6'1.5" maybe.
Yeah. So uh yeah. Regardless, Jalen, of course, is going to have all the swag and the confidence that we're going to win. So, who knows? What a dumb question, EJ. Thanks for that. So,
That's a pretty good question.
okay.
And I'm surprised EJ knew
Who
who
those
these
guys
guys
were,
were.
being the non-Michigan fan that he is?
Right.
Yeah, too funny.
So in that, yeah, I give him respect for that. And actually, last one, Jay Schultz says gorilla or grizzly bear, who wins?
Gorilla or grizzly bear?
Yep, in a fight.
Grizzly bear. I think a grizzly bear for sure.
I think
Yeah.
it's grizzly bear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen them up. Yeah, there you have it.
they're scary.
Yep.